Hello and welcome to Indus News, live from Islamabad. I am Munib with the news of this hour. Let's begin with the top stories first. India says it has temporarily brought back officials from its consulate in Kandahar, a major city in southern Afghanistan. In a statement, the Foreign Ministry cited intense clashes between the Taliban and the Afghan government. Meanwhile, Australia has announced the end of its Afghan mission by withdrawing all troops from the war-torn country. At least 12 people have been killed after a minibus carrying irregular migrants crashed in Turkey. Officials say 26 others were injured when the vehicle caught fire after tumbling into a ditch in eastern Van province. They say the migrants hailed from Afghanistan, Pakistan and Bangladesh. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has won Ethiopia's delayed elections with an overwhelming majority. The election board says Abiy's Prosperity Party won 410 out of 436 seats, giving him another 5-year term in office. But a fifth of the country failed to carry out voting overall due to insecurity and logistical problems. Brazil has reported more than 1,200 COVID-19 deaths and over 48,000 infections overnight. Australia has reported its first coronavirus-related death of 2021 and the highest daily cases this year. In Pakistan, the virus has claimed 27 lives and infected nearly 2,000 people in the past 24 hours. There are more than 4 million fatalities globally and over 186 million others. These were the top stories. News in detail after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now let's have the news in detail. India has withdrawn its officials from its Kandahar consulate for security reasons amid Taliban advances. In a statement, the Indian Ministry for Foreign Affairs said the arrangement is temporary and the consulate will be operated by locals. Meanwhile, Australia has announced the end of its Afghan mission by withdrawing all troops from the war-torn country. Taliban continue to make territorial gains, claiming that they have seized a key base in the Kaldar district of northern Balkh province. Taliban spokesperson said 9 Afghan soldiers were killed during clashes at the district's Herathan port bordering Uzbekistan. The fighters also claim they have killed an Afghan military pilot in the Benai Hisar area in Kabul's District 8. Meanwhile, U.S. envoy Zalmay Khalilzad is on a tour of Qatar, Pakistan and Uzbekistan in the pursuit of an Afghan peace deal. And Iran has repatriated Afghan border guards and customs staffers that fled after the Taliban captured a border crossing. Now for more on this, we are joined by Major General retired Ijaz Awan, a defense analyst from Pakistan. Thank you, sir, for your joining on Indus News. Now, Zalmay Khalilzad is once again visiting the region to push for a political settlement. While there are reports of Kabul and the Taliban discussing future constitution, ceasefire, political roadmap and the political participation in the transition period in Doha. Are we getting closer to a political settlement in Afghanistan, or is it more of the same?
More of the same, because unfortunately, the United States of America neither exercised its control, influence, time, resources to build an understanding or to develop an understanding for a peaceful settlement of in Afghanistan. Now, I personally feel Zalmay Khalilzad or United States of America, on one hand, they are promising an aid of about $4.5 billion annually to sustain the Afghan National Army and the government of the day. But to the contrary, the regional countries which have an interest in the region, and particularly they have to gain from peace in Afghanistan, they are trying to reach a settlement and trying to build an understanding between the different factions of people in Afghanistan, different factions of Afghan people. Now, having seen this, I personally feel it is not Zalmay Khalilzad or it is not United States who is going to call the shot. Rather, China, Russia, Iran, Afghanistan, and the Central Asian states that surround or neighbor Afghanistan, they'll call the shots and they'll be able to build an understanding.
Right now, General Ijaz, also Zalmay Khalilzad is scheduled to visit Pakistan as well. After the strong stance taken by Pakistan's Prime Minister, what do you believe would be on the US envoy's agenda trip to Pakistan?
Honestly speaking, U.S. wants to remain relevant in the region and in Afghanistan. If they do not have a political or geopolitical, geostrategic relevance in the region, I think they'll be marginalized to their disadvantage. Now look at this region: China, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Central Asia, Russia, Iran, Turkey. If this complete belt goes, and including, of course, now Syria, where Bashar al-Assad has been re-elected, Libya and Iraq, if from these areas Americans, they lose influence and they have no allies as such, so this complete belt will come under influence of Russia and China, which would be a great disadvantage or strategic disadvantage to the United States of America. Now, to achieve that relevance, they would like to stay in communication with Pakistan, though President Biden is still not called Prime Minister of Pakistan, despite the fact that they pulled out of the region and Pakistan facilitated their withdrawal from Afghanistan after 20 years of war. So I think to achieve that relevance, Zalmay Khalilzad is coming to Pakistan, he is going to talk to the Taliban, but we have to see what they have to offer to these two countries to stay relevant without affecting their relationship, as Prime Minister of Pakistan has spelled it out very clearly, without affecting our strategic relationship and convergence of interest with China.
Right now, lastly, General Ijaz, the Taliban are making rapid gains in key areas, especially along the northern international border. They pledged they will not take over Kabul militarily, but last night they infiltrated the Bani Hisar area of Kabul's 8th district to kill a fighter pilot of the Afghan Air Force. Can this trigger a re-engagement of the American troops?
Taliban are still committed, as they are saying, that we will stand by our agreement that we have signed with the United States of America, though they feel let down because the names of the Taliban leaders who was on the blacklist by the United Nations, they have not been removed, and their prisoners in 34 districts have not been released, all of them, as was promised as per the agreement. So for this reason, Taliban are a little disappointed, but yet they say we will stand to our commitment. We do not wish to see violence in the country, because people in Afghanistan, they need peace after 40 years of war in total. Now, there is a desire in Afghanistan from the people. There is a pressure because people wish to live in peace. And that is what the Taliban are trying to achieve. They are very good negotiators. They are much transformed as compared to Mullah Omar's Taliban. So I feel that the Afghan Taliban would like to exercise restraint, though they are not a military-like disciplined organization, and a few misunderstandings, few skirmishes, or few small-level attacks may take place right and left, but as a force, as a party of interest, I don't think they'll like to go for violence.
Absolutely. Now, Major General retired Ijaz Avan, thank you for talking to Indus News. Now, moving on, at least 12 people have been killed after a minibus carrying irregular migrants crashed in Turkey. Officials say 26 others were injured in eastern Van province. They added the vehicle caught fire after tumbling into a ditch in Muradiye district near the border with Iran. Authorities say the migrants hailed from Afghanistan, Pakistan and Bangladesh. They say the owner of the bus has been detained. Turkey has been a key transit point for migrants aiming to cross into Europe. Moving on now, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has won Ethiopia's delayed elections with an overwhelming majority. The election board says AB's Prosperity Party won 410 seats out of 436, giving him another 5-year term in office. But a fifth of the country failed to carry out voting overall due to insecurity and logistical problems. Polls were not held in the war-torn Tigray region, where many thousands are living in famine conditions. AB, winner of the Nobel Peace Prize, described the vote as a historically inclusive election in a tweet. Another round of elections has been penned for 6 September in the affected areas, but a date has not been confirmed for Tigray. The election had already been delayed due to the pandemic. Now moving to Venezuela, where at least 26 people, including 4 security officials, have been killed in clashes between police and a gang in northwestern Caracas. The casualty count comes after days of heavy gunfire left some residents fleeing their homes. In a briefing, Interior Minister Carmen Melendez said an unspecified number of civilians were killed and nearly 40 people injured. Vice President Delcy Rodriguez alleged the gang was linked to some opposition politicians. Rodriguez said authorities have also held 3 alleged members of Colombian paramilitary groups in the raids. Yemen's government claims its forces have killed a top Houthi commander, Abu Yahya al-Hanimi. The defense ministry says al-Hanimi was killed in a fierce 5-hour battle for Al-Zahir district. They said that the rebels suffered heavy damages in men and material. The ministry also claimed to push deeper into Houthi-controlled areas in Al-Sauma and Al-Hazimiyah. The Yemeni army spokesman Rabi al-Qureshi said they repulsed a rebel attack in Al-Jadafir region. An explosion has targeted a U.S. military base in Syria's eastern region of Deir ez-Zor. State media says the blast occurred at the Conoco gas factory in Conoco. A U.S. defense official says initial reports do not indicate any casualties or damage. No group has claimed responsibility for the attack so far. While the incident is the latest in a series of attacks on American personnel in Iraq and Syria in recent days. Beijing has slammed the U.S. decision to add 23 Chinese entities to an economic blacklist over alleged human rights abuses. The U.S. Commerce Department's entity list bans Americans from selling goods and equipment to those firms. The Chinese Ministry of Commerce criticized the move, calling it a suppression of Beijing's firms. It said Washington's measure is a serious breach of international economic and trade rules. The ministry added Beijing will take necessary measures to safeguard its legitimate rights and interests. Moving on now, China and North Korea have vowed to strengthen bilateral cooperation in the face of foreign forces. The leaders of the 2 countries traded messages on the 60th anniversary of their Treaty of Friendship. North Korean state media says Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un termed the bilateral relationship vital. In his message to the Chinese President Xi Jinping, Kim said the friendship is growing stronger by the day. Meanwhile, President Xi promised to lead the relations of friendship and cooperation to a new stage. China has been North Korea's only major ally since the 2 countries signed the treaty in 1961. Meanwhile, Brazil has logged over 1,200 daily deaths from COVID-19 and more than 48,000 new cases. Meanwhile, Australia has reported its first death and the highest daily infections of this year. Globally, the coronavirus has claimed more than 4 million lives and has infected over 186 million people. More about the pandemic in this report.
While lockdowns can prevent the spread of new coronavirus, governments realize that the long-term solution lies with administering vaccines. Cuba's regulators have approved one of its own 5 candidate vaccines for emergency use in the wake of surging cases. In Brazil, residents of Ilha Grande Island, off the coast of Rio de Janeiro, received their first doses of vaccinations. While a new poll says for the first time, the majority of Brazilians support the removal of President Jair Bolsonaro.
Our country is a disgrace to the whole world. While I am happy to receive the vaccine, I am very sad for all the grieving people at this time.
Over in Europe, the EU says it has delivered enough vaccines for at least 70% of adults, and about 500 million doses will now be distributed across member states. England's new Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, has warned NHS waiting lists could rocket to 13 million in the coming months as concerns rise over the backlog faced by the health service. Meanwhile, Scotland's daily test positivity rate is whooping high at 9%. The situation seems to be getting worse for Russia too, as the country reported 752 daily deaths, its highest since the pandemic began. Over in Australia, New South Wales authorities say the numbers in and around Sydney are expected to rise, raising the likelihood that the 3-week lockdown in the country's biggest city and surroundings will be extended.
It really depends on how quickly we can turn the numbers around, but given where we're at and given the lockdown was supposed to be lifted on Friday, I think everybody can tell that it's highly unlikely at this stage given where the numbers are.
Bangladesh has secured an additional 17.5 million vaccine doses amid record deaths and over 1 million cases. The country has been under strict lockdown for 2 weeks with troops on the streets to stop people from going outdoors. Meanwhile, India has reported nearly 900 deaths and more than 41,000 new infections in the last 24 hours.
Meanwhile, Pakistan has registered 27 deaths from COVID-19 over the past 24 hours. The Health Ministry says the death tally is approaching 22,600. The ministry says the virus infected nearly 2,000 people overnight. According to the NCOC, Pakistan's positivity rate has surged to 4.09%, the highest since May 30th. The country's caseload has exceeded 973,000, while more than 913,000 people have recovered. The ministry says there are over 37,000 active cases, of which more than 2,100 are in critical condition. Now, Japan's naval ship Yugiri has visited Karachi port and held joint exercises with the Pakistani Navy. A Pakistan Navy spokesperson says the ship was received by senior Navy officials and the Japanese defense attaché. The spokesperson said the exercise reflects Islamabad's commitment to peace and stability in the region. The drills are aimed at promoting maritime security in the Indian Ocean region. They also enhance cooperation between the two navies. The Japanese Navy ship also took part in the multinational naval exercise Aman 21 in February. More news coming up in this news bulletin after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back now. In another illustration of rising Islamophobia in India, more than 80 Muslim women were put up for sale in fake auctions online without their knowledge. Their photos were uploaded to a website, GitHub, under a derogatory and racist title.
The rise of Narendra Modi and the Hindu nationalist BJP party in 2014 has left Muslims in India being treated as second-class citizens in their own country. Many of the country's 170 million Muslims have felt terrorized after several lynchings of Muslim men for alleged violations of the sacred rights of cows. Now, another incident of online harassment has fed a climate of anxiety and concern in the community. Last Sunday, dozens of Muslim women found they had been put up for sale online platform under the title Sully Deal of the Day. Sully is a racist insult against Muslim women in India. India's National Commission for Women said the incident was focused on Muslim female researchers, analysts, artists, and journalists. Delhi police have filed a case against unknown persons, as they don't know who is behind the horrific harassment campaign.
Now, India's big cities are facing a growing housing crisis amid an increase in population. A UN report earlier said the country will cross China as the world's most populous country by 2027.
Home to 1.3 billion, has been witnessing an influx of villagers migrating to the cities for better jobs and education. It has led to a mushroom growth of illegal settlements and slums in the megacities like New Delhi.
If we see the rate at which the population is growing, I feel in the next 20 years, people will turn into cannibals. There are no jobs, no space to live, and if the situation persists, people will start encroaching on others' properties.
Sangam Vihar, located in the southern part of Delhi, is a stark contrast to plush areas of the Indian capital. They are often unauthorized and enriched with poor sanitization facilities and an erratic supply of clean drinking water and electricity.
Population is growing every day, so natural resources are getting diminished day by day. Job loss are more because of the companies not growing. There is a limit which any country can grow. So I think India has reached the peak. There should be something to do for the population control now.
According to a 2018 report, about 14 million Indian families live in informal housing, including slums.
Now in South Africa, police say they have arrested 28 people over violent protests linked to former President Jacob Zuma's imprisonment. Protests broke out this week in Zuma's home province after he handed himself over to the police to serve a 15-month jail term. Police spokesperson Jay Naikar said the arrests were made on charges including public violence, burglary and damage to property. He said protesters set alight some trucks near Mui River besides looting shops. The law enforcement had been deployed to all districts in the province, but there were no deaths or injuries. Zuma was sentenced for defying a court order to give evidence at an inquiry probing corruption during his 9 years in power. Now, Maldivians are set to vote in a parliamentary election today amid concerns over corruption grafts and stalled reforms. The West and the Russia contest for influence in the small ex-Soviet state of 3.5 billion people. Pro-Western President Maya Sandu hopes to win a majority to fight corruption and carry out reforms. Sandu accuses allies of her pro-Russian predecessor Igor Dodon of blocking the reforms, while Dodon supporters accuse her of pursuing a pro-Western policy that they say will collapse the state. Bulgarians are voting to elect a new parliament amid anger over corruption. An April election resulted in a fragmented parliament that failed to produce a government. The vote will decide whether protest parties form the government after a decade of dominance by Premier Boyko Borisov. Opinion polls suggest his GERB party appears tied with the new anti-establishment There Is Such a People party at 22%. Analysts say even if GERB manages to nudge ahead, it is unlikely to find allies to forge a coalition. The interim government has accused Borisov's cabinet of spending billions of levs of taxpayer money without transparency. Meanwhile, in Italy, Pope Francis has appeared in public for the first time since undergoing intestinal surgery a week ago. He greeted his supporters from the balcony of Gemelli Hospital in Rome. The Pope said good healthcare should be free and accessible to all. He criticized managers of church-run hospitals who prioritize money over health service. He also appealed for an end to the spiral of violence in Haiti, where President Jovenel Moise was assassinated on Wednesday. Moving on, Cuba has accused the U.S. of stalking illegal migration by not processing visas in Havana. This has led many residents in the country to take to the streets, endangering their lives. In a statement, Consular Affairs Director Ernesto Soberon said the U.S. government is responsible for irregular flows of travelers. He said Washington aims to destabilize Cuba, discredit the anti-Leon government and steal its technical and professional resources. Havana says the sanctions during the presidency of former President Donald Trump have entangled the country into the economic crisis. More than 500 Cubans have been returned to the country in 2021 by the migration authorities of the U.S. and Mexico. Cuba has urged the U.S. to comply with the January 2017 declaration to prevent the consequences of irregular immigration. Now, wildfires are raging in the western U.S. states as the region is hit by a heat wave that has brought record temperatures to several areas. Communities have been told to evacuate as firefighters struggle to battle the blazes in the extreme conditions. 2 firefighters in Arizona died when their aircraft crashed while responding to a wildfire. The National Weather Service has issued an excessive heat warning for the majority of the western states. Meanwhile, temperatures are expected to soar above 40 degrees Celsius in multiple states. The extended heat wave, which coincides with a record-setting drought, has already killed at least 116 people in Oregon alone. Now moving to China, where thousands of people have been evacuated after heavy rains battered the southwestern Sichuan province. Authorities say rainstorms since Friday have pushed up water levels in 14 rivers. Authorities said more than 21,000 people have been relocated since Friday. They said over 120,000 people have been affected by flooding in the region. Waterlogging and landslides due to the downpour have affected 110 villages, damaged 204 houses and blocked many roads. Meanwhile, Dazhou city in the province has activated the highest alert for rainstorms on Sunday. Also in Pakistan, authorities have issued a thunderstorm warning for the northeastern part of the country. In a statement, the Disaster Management Authority said the region will face heavy rains and wind from July 10th and to 14th. It added there is a likelihood of urban flooding in the cities of Rawalpindi, Lahore, Gujranwala and Faisalabad on July 12th and 14th. It also warned of possible landslides in vulnerable areas of Punjab. The PDMA has directed all concerned authorities to be on high alert to avoid any mishap. Now, China's first space-bred rice is ready for a bumper harvest in southern Guangdong province. It heralds Beijing's success in creating a completely self-developed rice breed in the future. Researchers at the South China Agricultural University began reaping the valuable rice on Friday. The batch of 40 grams of space rice traveled to the moon on China's Chang'e 5 lunar probe last November. During the 23-day journey, the probe encountered violent sunspot activity in the Van Allen belts. Upon their return, the rice seeds were planted in soil in a lab environment and they grew there for more than a month. The scientists plan to cultivate the harvested rice seeds in the lab for preparation for autumn planting next. Now, director Sean Penn's film Flag Day held its photo call at the 74th Cannes Film Festival today. The world's biggest cinema showcase kicked off on the French Riviera on July 6 and has so far drawn stars from around the world despite health crisis restrictions. Other films that will be featured today include Where is Anne Frank?, Drive My Car, Bergman Island and Three Floors. Film stars from all around the world dazzle on the red carpet in France on the 6th day of the festival. Attendance is down compared to previous editions and with far fewer glitzy parties often held on yachts off the coast. This year's reboot is taking place amid rising cases of the highly transmissible Indian variant of the virus in France. And now let's have a look at how the weather is doing around the world. Well, that is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.